few more people still trickling in here, but we can't wait forever. So we're going to go ahead and get this party started. We got a great presentation set up for you all tonight. So let's go to our title screen here. Oops. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Eric Wright. I'm going to be your primary presenter tonight, and we are doing part 2 of our native plant landscaping series. And tonight's topic is design your own native plant project. So to start things off, we're going to do a quick little poll. This is basically the Zoom version of everybody stand up and introduce yourself, except for it's way less awkward. So Ramona, if you could put up the poll now. We're just trying to get an idea of who's in the room. All you got to do is click the answer to the question on the poll. And we want to know who's in here and kind of so everybody can kind of get engaged. We have a bunch of pros. We got a bunch of amateurs. We have first timers. We got people that have been doing this for years. We just kind of want to know what our audience is. And I think it's nice for you guys to know who each other are too. All right, cool. We got some numbers rolling in. Looking great. All right. We're over halfway. So we got people joining in too. Awesome. So we wanted to know if you've ever been to the Nature Institute, because I know we have people in here from all over the country today. And it looks like about a quarter of us have been to our property before. Do you have native plants in your yard? No surprise here, but 83% of us already have native plants in our yards. Have you been to T&I's native plant sale? We've been doing this native plant sale annually for about 20 years. And it looks like some people have already bought some plants from us. How did you find out about it? As anticipated, Facebook is our main driver here. But a lot of people, went to our website or somebody was told about it. Cool. Thank you for sharing with your friends. And now let's close out this poll. And we're going to get into the meat of the presentation. So our topic is design your native plant project. And I'm going to walk you through the process that I would use kind of come up with a native plant project. But first, let's go through a couple introductions. So we are the Nature Institute. We are located in Godfrey, Illinois. We're in basically the St. Louis Metro East area. We're right across the Mississippi River from St. Louis. We're a not-for-profit organization, and our mission is to foster environmental awareness through education, restoration, and preservation. Our education program is awesome. Throughout every spring and fall, we have pretty much a booked up series of field trips for school-age kids. We also do all kinds of special programming all throughout the year, both for adults and children. And then during the summer, we do a really cool Discovery Day Camp where kids come out for a week at a time, and they get to play outside for a full week, and they learn a little bit about the environment. And it's a great program that is real popular locally. So behind the scenes tonight, I got a couple people helping me out here. Ramona is my administrator, so she's the one that threw up the poll, and if I screw anything up, she's going to help me fix that. We also have Scott Moss as a special guest. I'm really going to burn through some material here, and I'm not going to take time to stop in the chat, but excuse me, Scott knows even more about this topic than I do, so he's a great person. He can answer some questions as they arise as we're going through our material tonight. So this is part of our native plant landscaping series. And 2 weeks ago, we did our first presentation, and it was just why native plants. And we covered a lot of the ecological principles, kind of some of the biology behind why it's good to have these native plants in our yard. This week, of course, we're going to do design. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to do native plant installation and maintenance. And then we're going to finish our series up with basically how we kind of propagate plants here at the Nature Institute. We have a group of volunteers that have been growing plants for years, and we're getting pretty good at it. So we're going to show off some of the things that we do. And all this culminates in our native plant, or the Nature Institute's Wildflower Market on May 8th. We're going to hold this at the Nature Institute, and it's going to be on a Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to noon. Let me skip to our next slide here. So this is just kind of basic information. I do want to thank our sponsors. We got some great neighbors named Terry and Nancy Dueling. and they help kind of support some of our expenses for the greenhouse. Mississippi Mud Pottery is a great local business. They have all kinds of stuff already built for you. They also do like custom works for you. And we have Juniper Environmental, another local business here, and it's a woman-owned business. And if you have something that's like a little bigger than like a small landscaping project, they're great to reach out to help you kind of design a bigger project. At our wildflower market, of course, we're going to be selling the plants that we propagate here. But on top of that, we have these 5 great vendors that are come across. And if you notice, we got Scott Moss from the LCC Restoration Ecology Program there. We still are accepting sponsors. If anybody knows somebody that would be interested in sponsoring our wildflower market, we would love to talk to them, and they can contact me directly at the ewrite@thenatureInstitute.org. All right, we're just going to really jump into this here. So I got a lot of material to cover tonight, but don't worry, because we are going to record this entire webinar and we're going to post it on YouTube tomorrow. So if I'm going fast, I kind of need to, because we're going to cover a lot of stuff, but you'll be able to rewatch this video tomorrow, and you can kind of follow along the steps that we're going to use to design this project. But to start off, we're going to go over the basics of kind of what you're going to kind of think about when you're designing a project. So I always start with, what is your objective? What are your goals? So maybe you're trying native plants for the first time. Maybe you already have great landscaping, but it's like, hey, maybe I want to fit a couple native plants in there. Maybe you have a really targeted goal or objective, like I just want to help the monarchs. So you're going to get a lot of milkweeds. Outside of that, maybe you have the kind of the broader ecological objective of you want to attract birds, butterflies, pollinators, wildlife. You just want to benefit the ecosystem as a whole. Something I always harp on is maybe you just want to mow less grass. If you convert part of your yard to a little pollinator planting, like we're going to do later, you're going to mow less grass. You're going to spend less time on a weekly basis. You're still going to have to do a little bit of work because it is a garden, but in the long run, you're going to use less resources cutting that grass than you will be maintaining your pollinator project. So once we've kind of established our objective, we need to kind of evaluate our space. So the first thing we need to think about is what's there now. After that, let's look at the light situation. Do we have any topography to deal with? What's our soil like? And we don't want to forget about our neighbors, because we'll get more into that in a second. So what's there now? Do you have some existing landscaping? Maybe you have some flower beds. It's good to know, are you converting something from turf grass and you're going to turn that into a flower bed? If you already have those existing landscaping, do you have mulch to deal with? Do you have rock? Maybe there's some landscaping cloth. We want to kind of have a holistic understanding of our project before we ever start it, so we can kind of know we're going to handle it along the way. Also, maybe you have some garden ornaments like a bird bath or an awesome concrete hippo head that I'm sure everybody has one of those in their yard, right? All right, so our next step is, let's talk about our light situation. So if the garden bed that you're going to put some native plants to is right next to your house, you have to take into consideration what side of the house the garden bed is on. If it's on here at the Nature Institute, we're in Godfrey, Illinois. If it's on the south or the west side of the house, it's actually going to be a hotter, drier environment than something that's on the north or the east side. And on top of that, we got to think about if it's on the east side, so you might get really good morning sun, which is different than an afternoon sun. It's just a different amount of heat, and therefore different plants are going to thrive in those different conditions. If you got all day sun, that's a great condition to have, because we have a lot of prairie plants that can just thrive in that all day sun condition. Mostly shade can be a little bit more challenging, but you can still find these native plants that they can do well with that shade or that dappled light. Do we have that big shade tree in our yard? Maybe the oak is our favorite tree and we never want to get rid of it, but we can work around that with certain projects. And we're going to go through some tools that we can use to help us find the right plants for the right light requirements. At the end here, I said a plant's light requirement is legit. However, I would say this is a most of the time thing. Some of our more hardy species, you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room. Like if it says full sun, but like it's like a wild bergamot, it might still grow pretty well if it just gets really good afternoon sun or really good morning sun. So some plants are a little more adaptable to your conditions. So the light requirement is very important, but nothing is concrete in the world of plants, guys. All right, so we got to look at our topography also. So is our yard just a nice flat surface? If it's flat, is there little depressions in there? Does it hold water for a while? After it rains, you know, is the one part of your yard wet for, you know,
Hey, Eric, you're muted.
when did I get muted?
Just.
Huh?
Only just.
Just now? Okay. So topography, let's just start the slide over. We need to know kind of, do we have any hills in our yard? It's a nice flat surface that kind of drains pretty evenly, or do we have some like little depressions in the yard, maybe areas in your yard that hold water for, you know, 2 or 3 days after a big rain, and then they eventually dry. If you're on a slope, then you're obviously going to have better drainage of your rainwater over time, and that's going to create a little bit of a drier condition. And then on top of that, if you have a southwest facing slope, that's going to create an even drier environment because you have water that runs off and it gets that hot afternoon southwest sun. So we need to think about topography when we're planning our project also. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about soil. Ultimately, soil isn't as important for these native plants as some of our ornamentals, because our native plants are adapted to our conditions. They can handle a lot of stuff. But sometimes you're working with existing conditions. So you might have amended soil. So maybe the previous planting added a lot of compost or fertilizer. Maybe you're lucky and you just have really rich organic soil. Around here, around the Nature Institute in Godfrey, Illinois, we have a lot of clay soils. So that's going to hold water at a different rate. If you get off the top of the bluffs and go down into the floodplain, we actually have some areas that are real sandy soil. And sandy soil tends to drain out a lot faster than our clay soils or our organic soils. And really, with the soil is important, but our plants are very tolerant because they're native. But we want to know kind of that soil moisture level. So you have a nice, rich organic soil that's actually going to hold and retain water for a longer period of time. However, if you have a clay soil, it's going to take a lot of water to get anything to soak through that clay, and a lot of it's just going to run off. If you have sand, that's just the opposite problem, where it's going to seep through that sandy soil very quickly. So our soil is going to also determine our soil moisture levels. And we don't want to forget about our neighbors. We're going to play nice. We don't want to make any neighbors angry, because we don't want to make them kind of shy away from the native plant movement that we're all a part of here. We want to look into see if there's any local ordinances that might kind of limit what we can do. Some cities have a percentage of grass per yard, or a plant height limitation. If it becomes a problem, or you want to kind of like try to pre-mitigate some stuff, you can use some supplemental signage. I found this sign at grownative.org, which is a great local organization here in the St. Louis area. And this sign just kind of shows people what you're going on. Your plants might look different, but if you have just one little sign to show them what you have going on, then they might say, oh, okay, that's why it looks different. And that might be enough to kind of ease them into your new weird plants. All right, so what we're going to do tonight, this is kind of the meat of the presentation, is we're going to design a backyard pollinator patch. And I'm just calling it Project 1 here. So we're going to go through the steps that I just talked about, and we're going to kind of think it out and go through it. After that, we're actually going to pick out our plants. We're going to take great notes, and then we're going to draw a landscaping design. I hope you guys like all this, and I hope it becomes really useful for you after you get done with this whole video. So let's start. This is a completely hypothetical situation. This is nobody's yard. This is, okay, I'm going to hand pick my conditions so I can kind of teach you the process more than the process to the conditions in your yard. But with the tools you use tonight, you're going to be able to basically create your own project and have a real thought out project before you ever put a plant in the ground. So in our hypothetical situation, our objective is to provide habitat for pollinators and beneficial insects. You'll see why that's important in a minute here. We also, our neighborhood is all prim and proper, so we want to make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing. So we're going to do some stuff to make sure we always have something blooming. We probably don't want any super tall plants because that'll scare the neighbors away. And in the long run, we want this to be a pretty low maintenance thing. You know, we might have to spend some attention on it the first 2 years, but after that, hopefully this design can actually thrive into the future with little to no maintenance. All right, so the location of our planting. We're going to put this in our backyard. If you have something in your backyard, it's not affecting your curb appeal. So you have a little more leeway. So it might be a good place to start in the backyard if your conditions permit. We're also just going to kind of throw it in the corner of the yard. That's way it's not like dead center and just kind of getting in the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace existing turf grass, so we don't have to mow that little corner of the yard anymore. The project size is actually going to be a 10 by 10 foot planting area. So that's going to give us 100 square foot to work with. And around that 10 by 10 square, we're going to put a 2-foot buffer. So if you do 14 by 14, now our total project is actually 196 square feet, but that's with the 2-foot buffer around it. And we're doing that to give our plants a little bit of room to grow, but also to kind of make the project look real intentional. So it will actually increase the aesthetic value of it just by having a buffer around it. So let's evaluate our hypothetical site. So I'm basically going to tell you what our conditions are. So in our backyard, our perfect situation here, we have full sun. We have a lot of plants that just love those conditions. Our soil moisture, you know, it's pretty flat. Nothing really puddles up. So we're just going to call it kind of average soil moisture. Right now, there's a fescue blend of grass growing in there. That'll be important to know if you're going from turf grass to, you know, a whole new project. We also want to make sure that our project is within distance of our hose. So we want to, as the plants are getting established, you know, the first month or two, you're gonna have to go out there and give them a little bit of water, kind of baby them along. Maybe in the middle of the summer, you might be able to give them less water and only water them during dry periods. But you're going to be so invested in this project, you're not going to mind dragging a hose out there every once in a while. So what are we going to do to prepare our site? We said we had that fescue blend of turf grass. So, excuse me, really you have two options. So you can solarize or you can use herbicide. So solarizing is where you're going to put down a tarp or some clear plastic, and that's going to trap heat and moisture underneath that tarp. And what it's going to do is it's going to kill the vegetation under that tarp. So that's great. It totally works, but it takes more time. So if you're going to solarize for a project that you're going to do this year, you should have started that last summer. A much quicker option is the use of herbicide. And you could actually start something like that right now. So we would just use a broad spectrum herbicide like Roundup, and we would spray our little square, and then we'd wait a couple weeks to see what dies off and what doesn't. Then I would probably take a rake to it and get all the dead material out of there, maybe disturb the top of the soil just a little bit so more stuff can germinate. And then I'm going to spray it a second time to really make sure that I have the things under control that are there now. I recommend to never till one of these projects. When you till, you're turning over the soil, you're breaking up all the fungal associations beneath the ground, and then also you are exposing all kinds of weed seeds that could become a problem that's going to make your project less successful in the long run. So we just have a couple other, this is our project and we want things done our way. So we have these other preferences. I already kind of mentioned that we don't want those super tall plants. We don't want to scare off the neighbors, and we're not 100% comfortable with the situation yet. So we're going to kind of take it a little bit easy here and just keep the big, 12-foot sawtooth sunflowers out of here. We know that milkweeds are good for the monarchs, and monarchs are beautiful and everybody loves them. So we're going to make sure we have some milkweeds on our project. And our favorite color flower is red. So we want to make sure that we have some red flowers in our project. Okay, we're going to do the front end work live here in this webinar. I'm a big proponent of doing a lot of front end work. It's just going to make your project easier to maintain, and in the long run, it's going to make it more successful. Tonight, we're going to be using an Excel spreadsheet and the internet to do all our research and our note keeping, and then we're going to go back to paper after that to kind of do our design. But if you don't have the internet or you don't have Excel, just using books or paper is great. So I put a picture of this Missouri Wildflowers book on the slide because I just kind of like the layout of it. Everybody has their favorite field guides, right? Well, this one, the flowers are actually organized by color. And then on top of that, they're kind of sub-organized in blooming period. So the first yellow blooming flower that blooms in the year is going to be your first page, and the last one to bloom is going to be your last page in the yellow flower section. It kind of makes it easy for you to kind of plan out your sequence of blooms, so that way you always have something blooming in your project. Okay, now I have to get out of my PowerPoint here because we're going to Excel. So what we're going to do is we're going to take very detailed notes as we start to do research on different plants that we want to put in our project. So if you look up in the second row, we're going to both list the common name and the scientific name. I typically use the common name because it's easier for a lot of people to understand, but there is a—
Hey, Eric, can you minimize your PowerPoint?
Is that better?
I can't see it.
You can't see my Excel sheet?
Nope.
Uh-oh. Oh, it says I'm paused. Hold on. Let me try something else.
Sorry, we thought we had this figured out.
What about now?
There you go.
Okay, so anyways, this is going to be how we're going to keep our notes as we start to research our plants. So we're going to both keep track of the common name and the scientific name. I know we have people from all over the country in this webinar tonight, and a common name in one region might be different than a common name in another. However, the scientific name is always consistent, so you know exactly what plant you have. We're real interested in those pretty blooming flowers, so we're going to keep track of when these different flowers bloom. And then I need to move my window here. After that, we want to kind of know the size of our plants. So we're going to write down what the height of the plants are. And then we're also going to look at the spread. So typically the spread of a plant is reported as a range of sizes. So it might be like a 16 to 24 inches. So we're actually going to take the average of that to use to help us calculate the actual spread of our plant. And then we want to know, after we have the spread, we're going to have to calculate the surface area that those plants cover. So in my little cell here, this is the advantage of using Excel, is I've actually done the area of a circle. So I'm just imagining these plants aren't going to be perfect circles, but I can kind of use that to plan out my project. And the little formula I have up here basically equates to pi r squared. It's converted to feet and then divided by 2, yada, yada, yada. So for our project, we're actually going to put, we're going to put 3 of each plant in. It kind of gives us a little bit of wiggle room in case something fails, and we're going to be able to squeeze a lot of plants in that way. After that, I'm going to have to multiply the square feet of each individual plant times 3, so I have the total surface area. All right, so let's find some plants. So I guess I'm going to have to do a new share and go to— all right, I think I got to figure it out now. Can everybody see that?
The website, yes.
Okay, awesome. Oh, I just accidentally pulled up the Nature Institute Wildflower Market website. If you guys want more information about our organization at any given time, you can go to thenaturinstitute.org. We have all our events, all kinds of cool information on there. We're not going to go through that tonight. That's a whole nother webinar there. So the first thing we're going to do, there's a couple of local organizations that have these fantastic tools that will help us find plants. And our first one we're going to use is called the Grow Native. And you can see it's auto-populating for me, but Plant Picker. And when I click on that, I Googled it, so I got to click again. Hopefully my internet is relatively fast tonight. So it's going to take us to this web page. And as we scroll down, we can see, we can read all that if we want, but down here is where you kind of get into the meat of this page. And on the right side is actually a whole bunch of different plants, but those are plants for all conditions. They're all native to our region here. The Nature Institute, is in the Midwest. So this organization is a Midwest organization for the most part. So we have a lot of plants, but the cool thing about this is they have these filters on the left-hand column over here. So we're going to start selecting some plants right now by going through these filters. So what we want is, we don't want annuals. We're trying to get flowering plants. We don't want to mess with our grasses. Ferns are typically a shade environment. We don't want to mess with any shrubs or trees. So we're really going to focus on these herbaceous perennials. So that's something we put in the ground, and that plant's going to come back year after year. Some of them are a little bit short-lived, but most of the plants are going to live, 5, 10 years, no problem. So we're going to turn on that filter. And if you notice on the right side, it already changed our selection of plants in our overall pool over here. So for a hypothetical project, we said we have full sun conditions. So I can click on that. It looks like it's going to dwindle that down to 123 options. That's pretty awesome. Okay, looking at soil moisture, we're not really sure about our soil moisture, but we know it's not aquatic. It's not inundated throughout the entire year. We wouldn't even call it wet because it doesn't puddle up. And it's not southwest facing. It's not super slope. So we're not really going to call it dry. It's not sandy. So we're going to kind of highlight our high and moderate soil moisture conditions. We'll get back to the main color in a second here. Fall color, we're not going to use that filter tonight. I highly recommend you guys kind of just play with this tool and just find all the native plants. And if you're not from our region, hopefully you have an organization that has a similar tool. We're going to get back to all this stuff in a minute, but I'm going to keep scrolling down. Animal resistance, that might be interesting for some of you if you have a problem with deer or rabbit. Wildlife benefits, I like that one, but we're actually going to go to nature attracting. And one of our objectives was to benefit pollinators and beneficial insects. So we're going to click that filter. So now we're down to 50 plants. That helps out a lot. What we want to do is we want to plan our garden so we always have at least 2 species blooming throughout the year. So the season of interest category here is actually going to help us do that. So I don't know if you guys noticed before, but there's actually another little section. It was February to April. Well, obviously no plants fit that, so we've already lost that option. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with mid-May. We're going to start with the mid period, which is May through June. And we're going to scroll up one more time. And I'm kind of cherry picking here because here at the Nature Institute, one of our first flowers to pop up on our prairies is foxglove beard tongue. And it's a beautiful white spike of flowers. It's just a fantastic plant. And we know that it's one of the first things that blooms. So we're going to look for that plant. So if I go to the main color and I click more, I can actually look for a white flower. And I have to scroll up because I'm only down to 6 options here. And right here is our foxglove beard tongue. So when I click on that, it's going to give me a complete plant profile for the foxglove beard tongue. So it gives me the common name, and then after that, it gives me the scientific name, some more basic information. So we're going to use another tool also because the season of interest thing just isn't really consistent. Grow Native serves multiple states, and I think they try to keep it vague for this. So we're going to switch over to something else in just a second. But the main color is white. That's our bloom color. And if we come down, we have the height of the plant, and we also have the spread of the plant. And just all kinds of other great information. If you want to scroll through and read it, you can really start to learn some plants this way. So I want a more specific definition of, oh crud, I'm going to have to do this real quick. Sorry, my Zoom stuff is getting in the way. So I want a more specific bloom period because, you know, on our notes, we wanted to know when is this plant going to bloom because we're going to kind of line up to have as many blooms as we can throughout the entire season. So another great local organization for us is the Missouri Botanical Garden. And they are just full of great resources. So they have their own plant finder tool. So we'll click on that and it's going to take us, because I Googled it, here. We'll click one more time. And now we have this plant finder thing. So we can scroll down and you can see that there's actually a lot more options for stuff. So to kind of filter through to get you specifically to the plant you want. It's basically the same setup. I just find the Grow Native one a little bit less cumbersome to use. And what I want to do now is I want to go to our foxglove beard's tongue, and I'm going to highlight, copy, and paste the scientific name, and I'm going to enter it into the search box. And all I gotta do is click search. So now it's going to give me some options, and look, there it is. That's our plant. So we're going to click on that one, and look, there's another plant profile. So the reason I like this one better for certain things is the bloom time. So this gives me an April to June bloom time. All right, so if I go back to my notes now, I have all the information I need, and I can start to enter that into my Excel spreadsheet. So when I click on this, You know, I've already put this information in because there's only so much time, but I have my foxglove beard tongue. I have the Penstemon digitalis, the scientific name. We have the blooming period. You can't highlight. I'm going to highlight the cells with the different colors, but for white, I just put a dark border around it. We have the plant height. We have the spread. I did the average of the spread, and then luckily it just auto-populated the surface area per plant, and then the total surface area of the 3 plants. Okay, great. We have our first plant. I hope everybody is excited. And this is a quick reminder that this is all going to be recorded. I know I'm going to move really fast through this, but you'll be able to kind of go back and watch it at your own pace. You can pause that YouTube video, and hopefully all this will become really useful for you in planning your next project.
Be sure to show us the Excel sheet again if you're going to do more in it.
I apologize. Okay, so now hopefully everybody can see the Excel spreadsheet, and we see the foxglove beard's tongue and all of our information. The average spread, I talked about that, and then these are the auto calculated values in my spreadsheet. Okay, so now I got to go back to sharing this. All right, I'm always getting better, guys. All right, so let's go back to our Grow Native database, and so we already have a white flower. So let's try to get some more May to June color in here. I'm going to specifically target some yellow flowers. So I got to turn off this white filter to get rid of all those white options. And I'm going to go back to my options here and click white. Oh, silly me. Hold on. Where'd it go? I got to turn that back off. This is kind of like a native plant landscaping. You can prepare as much as you want, but you're also going to come across some challenges along the way, and we'll learn to deal with it. So we're going to look for some yellow flowers now, and they're up top here. So what I'm going to do is, I really like these cream wild indigos, just a great plant. So I'm going to click on that. If you notice up here at the top, we'll have the little profile that pops up. But we're going to go back and pick another plant, Prairie Coreopsis, or I'm sorry, Lance Leaf Coreopsis is one of my favorite plants. Pollinators love it early in the year, and the goldfinches are all over it later in the year. So we're going to add that, and now we have a couple of yellow options. So once we kind of cross-reference all this information with the Missouri Botanical Garden tool, we'll be able to add more information to our spreadsheet. And let's see if I can seamlessly transition here. All right, so now when we add in the yellow, okay, now we're starting to get somewhere. We have our common names, our scientific names. I filled in the blooming period with the approximate color of the plants, and then we have all the other information that we're going to use to kind of do our project in the long run. All right, and now I got to switch back again. This is a little bit cumbersome, but we'll make it work. Back to the web browser. All right. Now let's get a little less picky. We got some yellow, we got some white. Let's just turn that yellow off and kind of look at our plants as a whole. And we have all kinds of cool options on here. I'm just kind of going to scroll through these. We already have that cream wild indigo. We have a foxglove beard's tongue already, a Lance Leaf Coreopsis. What else do I like in this list? Ooh, I like purple coneflower. It's one of the most iconic flowers of the Midwest. So we're going to click that. We're just going to kind of leave it up in our tab for now. And we're going to go back and keep scrolling and see what else we have. Ooh, purple poppy mallow. They're just great looking plants. We need to have some of those in our project. All right, that's going to load up on its own. What else do we have? I think that's enough for now. But there was one plant that I was looking for, and I don't really see it on here. I absolutely love butterfly milkweed, and we said that we wanted milkweeds in our design. So I don't know why it's not popping up here, because I know it typically starts blooming late May and June. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to figure out why it's not coming up. And I bet they say that this plant prefers dry conditions. So I'm going to turn on that filter. And when I scroll back up, boom, there's my butterfly milkweed. So I'm going to load those. So I basically just keep all my tabs open and I cross-reference them. That way I can just add everything into the notes with relative ease. A lot of copying and pasting. Okay, so now we got to go back to our Excel spreadsheet here. And let me move this out of the way so I can see a little bit better. Okay, So now we got some plants, we got some color. It looks like our blooming periods are extending all the way into August. This is really starting to come together, and we only have 6 plants on our list so far. Pretty happy with it, and you can kind of see over here, we're kind of got a running total of our square footage. Remember, we have 100 square feet to fill. That's obviously not enough, so we're not going to calculate it yet, but we're getting there. But let's go back to the Grow Native Plant Finder tool, and we're going to change basically 2 things real quick. First of all, let's turn that dry back off because we don't consider our project to be in a dry area. We're going to have a little bit of wiggle room for our butterfly milkweed. So now I'm going to go from being the mid period, the May to June, and we're going to start looking at some later season plants. So that's July to frost. And once again, this is a little overly vague, and that's why I cross-reference with the Missouri Botanical Garden tool. So let's watch how all the plants change and go to the top, and we're going to start looking. And this aromatic aster is actually the original reason when I was setting this up that I needed to switch, because I know the aromatic aster we have here at the Nature Institute actually blooms mostly like September, October. Well, if you look at the season of interest, it says July to frost. So why is it interesting in July when it's not blooming yet? So that's why I started cross-referencing everything with the other tool we have available to us. Let's go back and start selecting some more plants. Let's see. I don't want none of those. That would be good, but I'm going to pass this time. We already have a couple of these. Prairie Blazing Star. You can't have a good project without a Prairie Blazing Star, right? So we're going to add that one into our notes. What else do we have? Showy Goldenrod. So Showy Goldenrod, I know blooms late in the year, especially here at the Nature Institute. Beautiful yellow blooms. And I see so many insects on these plants. I want to make sure I include that in our project tonight too. All right, still scrolling, looking for more plants. White prairie clover, that kind of looks like fun. Let's add that to our project. And let's see what that picture looks like when it's a little bit bigger. Wait for my internet to load. It's not a bad looking plant there. They're really cool because they start blooming from the bottom, and then they kind of travel up the little flower heads. And each one of those little white guys is actually an individual flower. Great for pollinators. Beautiful looking plant. All right, let's go back and see if we can find any more stuff. I don't see Rattlesnake Master on here, but I want Rattlesnake Master in our planting. So just know that I'm going to add that. We're not going to go through the steps that I went to find that. But all right, so let's see where we're sitting here. If we go back to our spreadsheet with all the plants that we just talked about, and we're going to look at how everything's looking. So there's the aromatic aster where I had to find the bloom period. Botanical Garden said it's actually August through October, where Grow Native said July. So I'm glad I kind of got a better feel for that. And my on-the-grounds experience kind of helps me see that. So now let's add on the rest of these. And oh boy, is this really starting to look good. So we have all these different colors. We got all kinds of great stuff going on. What are we up to? 12 different plant species. That's a lot of diversity for 100 square feet. We have everything kind of auto-populated with our square footage over here. So now is a good time for us to see how much space we're taking up with the plants that we've already selected. So we're going to auto-sum that, handy Excel. So we're at 90.34. And remember, we have space for 100 square feet, and we want to really pack our plants in densely. That way we have less chance for weeds to kind of get in there. We'll form what they call a green mulch. So just kind of looking at our bloom periods and everything going on, I kind of noticed a couple things. So I'm going to start kind of loosening our filters so we can come up with some more plants to add to this, kind of fill in the gaps of the blooms. So I did notice that the yellow is we got some late, we got some early, but we don't really have anything in the midsummer. How about a little more late fall color? Looks like we only have 2 species that might be blooming in October. So we want to add to that a little bit. And if you remember, one of our preferences was that we love red flowers, and we don't really have a lot of red. Butterfly milkweed is more like an orangish red for the most part. So let's make sure we find a red flower. All right, let's go back to our web browser real quick so we can find those plants. And we're back here, and let's see, we needed yellow. And I had a hard time finding the right filters to get the plant I was searching for. So I actually used excuse me, actually use the Missouri Botanical Garden for this. So I'm looking for Rudbeckia hirta, which is also commonly known as black-eyed Susan. And I got a great profile for it right here. So we're going to add that one to our list. If I just go back to what we have in our current conditions, I really like this wild blue sage, and I know that that blooms real late from my research that I did before the talk tonight. So we're going to add that to our list. And then what else did we need? We needed some red, and I don't think we have many red options. Let's switch our filter to turn on just red flowers. Looks like we have two options, and they are, okay, ironweed, which is more purple in my opinion, and then the purple poppy mallow, which is, I would say that's more like a magenta. It's not a true red. We want that cardinal red. You know, we're St. Louis people around here. We love that true red. So let's loosen one of our filters. What I'm going to do is turn off the pollinators and beneficial insects and look for that red plant. And now I have what I'm looking for. I have the royal catchfly. And so let's add that to our notes. All right, so now we got to bounce back one more time to our Excel spreadsheet. And things are really starting to come together now. We have a great series of blooms. Looks like something's going to be blooming throughout the entire year. Got all the different colors we're kind of looking for. This is looking like a great project. Let's find out if our square footage is starting to really add up. So we'll come down here and select our total square foot and do an auto sum on that. So now we're up to 120 square feet. And this is actually ideal for our planting because remember, we have that buffer around our project. So our plants can kind of lean to the outside a little bit and therefore take up a little more space. And really, we're only putting 20% more plants into the space. So it's not going to be a big issue. I wouldn't focus on trying to get exactly 100 square footage for a 100 square foot project. All right, so we have our plants, and what do we have here? I think we have 15 different species. This looks fantastic. Me being the Excel nerd that I am, I decided I had to clean this up to make it a little more presentable for you guys. And when I organize everything by bloom period, by bloom start basically, I end up with this spreadsheet here. So in this one, you can really start to see the picture that I'm painting. So we have in April, you know, we got our one blooming white flower. Then in May, we're up to 6 different plants that could be blooming. In June, we jump up to 10. July, we have 12. The summer months are great for a lot of these native plants. August, I think we're down to 11 there. And then we're kind of dwindling off. We got 6 in September and 3 in October. This is looks really good. Conceptually, this could really work out. We could really have a beautiful little pollinator project. I don't know if anybody noticed. I don't think I mentioned it before, but on the right-hand side here, we have availability. And on my next one, so all these plants will actually be available at the Nature Institute Wildflower Market on May 8th. So I was a little bit self-serving here, but we're going to have so many plants for you guys to buy coming up here in a little over a month. So that's awesome. All right, so now I have to go back to my PowerPoint presentation because we're going to talk about actually drawing out our design. Oh, it didn't work. Having a little bit of an issue here. Hold on one second, guys. Ramona, can you guys see my slides again?
Nope, we're still on the spreadsheet.
Okay. I have to reopen this real quick. You guys bear with me. Minimize that. Oh, we have technical difficulties. Please bear with me. I'm getting back to where I need to be. Oh, geez. I wish my desktop was more organized so things were easier to find. There we go. There we go. webinars. Okay, that is now open. Can I get it to pull up? There it is. All right, I'm back with you guys. Almost there. Let me share this. Thank you for your patience, and I apologize for the inconvenience. All right, we're back to the project. All right, so now it's arts and craft time, guys. Let's see if I can get it to pull up the right slide. There we go. So what I did is, so if I do one of these projects, I actually have a software that I use, and it makes it real easy. But I realize that most people are not going to have the software to do this. So I went to Office Depot and just bought some basic supplies. And I need a compass to make circles. I need a straight edge to make nice straight lines, graph paper to make a 2-scale landscape design. And then also I got these colored index cards so I can make different color circles to represent the color of the flowers that I'm going for. All right, we're going to fly through this too. So the graph paper is actually already kind of scaled for you, which makes it super easy to kind of hand draw out a design. And we want to do this for 2 reasons. One, we want to kind of conceptually have everything put together before we actually, put plants in the ground. But also we're going to have a map for, say, in the next year where we forget where we put our plants. We're going to have something to reference where we know where each one of our plants are. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open our graph paper and we're going to, let me move this. We're going to draw a little scale bar. So we want to make this 2 scales so we can kind of get a good idea where everything's going to be. And so basically on our piece of graph paper here, every 2 squares is going to represent 1 foot. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the buffer on our paper, and I kind of counted out the squares to make sure I had everything spaced out okay. And I ended up with this 14 by 14 square. I added that to my little margin over here to kind of just help myself, to guide myself when I'm looking at this in the future, in case I, I'll put this down and forget about it for a year. Next up, we're going to add in our actual planting area. And these squares should line up perfectly. And I add a little more notes here to make sure we have our 10-foot bed. Essentially, we're kind of building a template that we can kind of move plants on and off of and come up with our design before we, commit to putting a plant in the ground. Okay, so next up, I'm going to add just a little more notes. You can't have a good diagram without a north arrow. My handwriting is terrible. I'm not great at drawing, but if I can do it, you guys can too. I'm also going to add a couple more notes, like, straight to the south is our house. To the east here, we actually have the rest of our yard, and then we have neighbors both to the north and to the west. So it's just those little details are going to kind of help you keep track of all your plants even after you get them in the ground. So in our left-hand column over here, we're going to just list all the plants that we just picked through our different tools, and it's basically just transferring from your spreadsheet on here. Another thing that I did is I created little abbreviations, because what we're going to do is we're going to make little circles out of our index cards, and you can't fit foxglove beard tongue on a little circle, but if you have a little abbreviation, you can fit that on there. So our end product is going to look something like this. We have all the information we need. We just don't have any plants yet. So this is where our index card and our compass come in. We can make our little circles, put our initials on there, our abbreviations for each one of the plants, and then we can make those circles to scale using our compass. So this is my initial effort at doing this. I tried to do some math, and it's been a while, and I'm still not sure if I even did the math correctly here. And what else I figured out is the cheap little compass that I bought isn't very easy to calibrate based on the little markings on the compass. So I kind of went back to the basics and said, oh, wait a second. I have this scale bar, and I can just make the circle the right size that way. So I actually calibrated my compass with my scale bar versus trying to use the little numbers on the actual physical compass. So then the next thing to do is to draw your circle and put your little abbreviation in that circle. So this is going to be the cream wild indigo. And after you make a bunch of circles, you got to cut them out. And you can see on this little sheet that I've already cut out a couple more. So this is where you're probably going to make sure that you have a cup of coffee, a glass of tea, or even an ice cold adult beverage, because it's arts and craft time. So we're going to have fun cutting out little circles. When I got finished cutting everything out, I ended up with something like this. So I have different colors, different sizes. And this is where we're really going to start doing a lot of design. So now we can actually take these plants and put them on our template that we just created and come up with a couple different design ideas. My buddy Jason Woodson showed me this little trick. So you might not want to like commit to any design, and you might just want to store your little circles because you don't want to have to cut them all out again. And an Easter egg actually ended up being the perfect size for this. So thank you, Jason. All right, so let's do a couple quick designs here. And there's a couple things going on. So first of all, this design, there was a couple intentions behind it. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to put all of our tallest plants in the middle. So I checked back with my notes and kind of, got all the tall plants organized out, and I tried to cram those all into the middle. The other thing I wanted with this is I wanted to be able to see the butterfly milkweed because it's one of my favorite plants from my back porch. So I put those in the front row so I could see them from the house. I also kind of wanted to make sure I could see something blooming at all times a year from my back porch. So I put, white prairie clover because that kind of blooms in the middle of summer. And the aromatic aster is going to bloom all the way into October. So I kind of have that taken care of. Outside of that, I kind of just put stuff out there somewhat randomly. But what I didn't do is kind of separate everything out. This is called a mass planting, and it's where you group the similar plants together. And when you do this design, it'll make it easier to find your plants later, but it also creates those beautiful clumps of blooms. And it looks a little more intentional than if you just throw them all in there randomly. So I was happy with this, but I kind of wanted to see what else I could do. So on my next design, I decided that I didn't really like my neighbor to the north. They got a bunch of junk in their yard, and I kind of wanted to see them less and for them to see me less. So in this one, I put all the tall plants in the back, just hopefully kind of create a little living screen. I still did the mass planting strategy where I have groups of the same plants together, and I also try to spread out the different bloom colors and the different bloom periods. And what's great about doing it this way is we can do an infinite number of these designs, and we can always just start over again. And meanwhile, I'm taking a picture of each one of these designs. So ultimately, I don't have to glue these down to my piece of paper. I can just have that picture printed out and have that's for me to use into the future. Okay, I have one more example for you here. So this is more of a mixed planting versus a mass planting. It's where the plants aren't grouped together and they just look like they're kind of just thrown in there randomly. There was a little bit of strategy here. If you do a mixed planting, it's going to be more of a kind of a natural, more of a wild look. So with this strategy, you can still kind of spread out your different colors and your bloom periods, but now you're not going to have, 3 purple coneflowers right next to each other, a big chunk of wild blue sage. You're going to have kind of a little bit of everything everywhere. I think I still put the taller plants in the middle on this one, but it all kind of just came together in the end. All right, so that was a lot, and we can have a YouTube video up tomorrow and everybody can watch that. So our first webinar, which was 2 weeks ago, we did why native plants. That's already up on YouTube. Tonight was our design webinar. In 2 more weeks, we're going to do a native plant installation and maintenance. It's going to be, another Thursday night at 6:30. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to do the propagation and the greenhouse tour. And all this culminates in our wildflower market on May 8th. And it looks like I made it under my full hour. And now I just kind of want to open things up. And if anybody has any questions, I'd gladly answer them live. I'm sure Scott's been doing some chatting in the chat room. Let's see here. Oops.
Eric, I was going to point out to you in the chat room that you seem to definitely have a bias against native grasses, but so just to point out and to help everybody, I have a tendency to mix in a little more grasses only because they provide great sort of winter coverage. And so while I'm not looking for blooms, little blue stem especially gets a reddish bronze color in the late fall and in the winter. And that's a really nice specimen plant well beyond the growing season.
Oh yeah, Scott, I totally agree. That's just a whole nother project, but now we, hopefully everybody kind of has the tools to kind of design maybe another project, but they can take out a couple of my pollinator plants and put in those native grasses because they do have their own appeal, especially like a little blue stem, like you were talking about, looks great. And it kind of breaks things up a little bit too. If you're going to get kind of like into the next level of stuff, you can start to like blend textures. So you can actually look at the shapes of the leaves and kind of get like a flow of different textures as you go across the bed. But this is meant to be mostly for beginners, so anybody can do this. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Or Ramona, did you see any questions in the chat that we could help with?
So there was a question about whether we'll be doing pre-orders, and we will, starting in mid-April. We do not currently have a plant list or a price list ready to share out, but we will soon. Our greenhouse is growing very, very, very well.
Yes, yes. So trees are something we don't really grow in our greenhouse, or a different kind of monster. So that's why I reached out to, or we reached out to Forest Relief specifically, because we know that that's what they do. They do trees and shrubs. So they're going to come out to the native plant sale. They definitely specifically requested pre-orders. We're going to be announcing that soon, but I would recommend kind of checking out their website now to see what they have, so you can kind of be ahead of the game. All right. Anybody else have anything we should discuss? Scott, did you have any more comments that you'd like to add? Did you learn anything tonight?
Fantastic presentation. Again, I think Eric points out very well that this is the simplicity. You can easily kind of take this and expand it. I have a tendency to sort of prefer a shrub or two in there, especially things that have colored foliage. But again, the sky really becomes the limit on these things. So just utilize those resources and enjoy this.
Right. Yeah. So ultimately, you guys are going to have this project that, this is our hypothetical project, but it's your yard. And Scott and I have different styles, and each one of us individually is going to have a different style. And our style in the beginning might actually be a whole new style 10 years from now. So we can kind of evolve and do different things. But really the important thing is, when we're putting in these native plants, we're providing more benefits to the ecosystem as a whole than if we have the non-native ornamental plants. I noticed that, is it Beverly?
Yep.
So Beverly asked, what kind of green mulch would you recommend? And I think it was a little bit of a miscommunication there on my end. So when I'm talking about a green mulch, what I'm talking about is basically we're going to have so many plants packed in so tightly that they choke out the chance for anything else to grow. Because ultimately, if there's no sun making it to the soil, you're not going to have room for other plants. So that's why we put so many plants in 100 square feet. We had 120 square feet worth of plants in that smaller area. And when you pack them in real tight like that, it's almost like built-in weed control. However, I'm going to talk a little bit about this next week. Something else I would do with this design is I would plant everything from plugs, of course. But then on top of that, I would put about a 2-inch layer of mulch there the first year. It's going to break down over a couple years, and I'm just going to kind of let it go after that. But that mulch is going to be that weed suppression as all our native plants get established. So Mrs. Christoph asks about, when you cut out your circles, are you scaling to a mature size / spread? And yes, so the information that I'm pulling from the different tools that we use tonight is going to be the mature size of those plants. Some of the plants will actually develop to almost a full size in the first year, especially when we're planting plugs, because we've already given that advantage. But ultimately, our plants are going to reach their full size maybe in that second or that third year. And that's, again, why I would throw down that hardwood mulch. If you can just find straight hardwood mulch, I've used like a cypress mulch in the past, but just keep everything out and kind of minimize your work. You spread mulch one time, and you might have to do very little weeding throughout that first year. Second year, even less. And hopefully by the third year, that mulch is kind of breaking down, and now you have your green mulch, as we discussed above. Great questions, guys. I love this. This is a good time. I was taking a little bit of a risk trying to do this on Zoom, but it sounds like it's hitting where I wanted it to hit. So I'm so excited you all are here tonight. And I can't wait to see everybody that can make it to the Nature Institute Wildflower Market. I'm so excited to see all the vendors and what kind of plants they have. I mean, the ultimate goal is we want to get at least one native plant in everybody's yard. And if we have more plants and more variety of plants provided by more vendors, we hope we can reach that goal. Partnership is always a good thing. All right. Unless we don't have any more questions, we're going to call it for the night. Oh, thank you very much, Shandy. We appreciate it. We do it all for you.
So as we're wrapping up, the video should be uploaded after lunch tomorrow. We will include a copy of that spreadsheet so you guys have a good starting place. And we'll include some of the links that Eric talked about so that you can find those as easily as possible. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you're in the Godfrey area, please come out, hike our trails, come see us, come say hi. We would love to meet you in person.
And thank you to Ramona and Scott for helping out tonight. I can't do it all by myself here. And obviously I needed a little help with the screen sharing stuff. Thank you, Ramona. Thank you, Scott.
Always welcome.